Charlie, you know a lot of people just like Jimmy and I do. Is there any update on the Gregg Berhalter contract situation?
No update from what I've heard. It feels like both sides are waiting for opportunities. So if I'm looking into the situation, I would feel like Gregg Berhalter's looking out there if there's an opportunity that maybe would tempt him to jump into club management again. And then for the national team, you're waiting to see what other options there are out there. Because I think if you're going with a U.S. coach, then you're going to have to hope that you can sign Gregg Berhalter again, because I don't see another option for an American out there other than Jesse Marsh, who's not going to leave Leeds United. So I think from that standpoint, what Jimmy was saying long ago, which is you have to wait. You cannot rush into a situation in hiring a national team coach. You're looking to lead this group to the next level over the next 4 years up into that World Cup. So you wait for the perfect coach to come into the picture. So I know it's difficult for a lot of us because you want some answers, but I think patience is the way to go here.
And Jimmy, for you, looking at Gregg Berhalter and the way that he ran this national team, did you get a little bit of that inkling that perhaps he preferred a club environment, the way in which he was trying to run it, maybe a lack of acceptance of the way the national team works, that he prefers that environment over what is a very unique type of job that is the national team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think he was trying to run the national team as a club, and I think that at times gave us some frustrating moments because you're trying to teach all these, I don't say complex things that our players can't understand, but you're trying to cram a lot of stuff down their throat in a short period of time because you only have a certain amount of time with each group of players ahead of any window. And it was unfortunate ahead of the World Cup that we didn't have that 1 month run up like normal. Mm-hmm. So that said, it seemed like when we got to the World Cup, he did start to streamline and the players did respond in a positive way. And the attitude for 99% of the group was very good and pointed in the right direction. And obviously the results did what they were going to do. Now, maybe we should have been a little bit more complex and had some different plans for the Netherlands game, different conversation. But I do think that he was trying to run the team as a club team because that's what he knows. And I think the national team job is completely different in terms of the rhythm and pace of it. And I'm sure he got, I don't say bored, I just think you get antsy, right? You just want to be around. You want to have more input. You want to have more influence. And instead, you're just sending texts to guys like, oh, man, you played well. Keep it up. That's kind of what you're doing for the majority of your time. And then you got to get it really hyper-focused when you do get around the group of players. And as you try to instill what your ideas and methodology is. So I do think there probably is a draw. And as we mentioned before, this is the peak. I don't know if Gregg Berhalter takes it based on the recent history of our managers. He's probably going to get fired in a year and a half. I think his stock would be a lot lower then than it is currently, where he did a pretty good job to get us out of the group. And there were some things in that round of 16 game that you can feel like, all right, there were some ideas, and maybe if Christian scores early, that game goes different. Those are the fine margins. But I don't know. It's interesting. I think Gregg should really consider looking to make a move. And I agree with Charlie that both teams are looking at different opportunities. And I don't want to be in any rush. I'm just kind of curious about the January camp. So I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah.
With regard to is this January camp, I guess Gregg's still in charge. Does he want to do that? It's really interesting what they're going to do with that, especially if he hasn't signed anything prior to that camp starting.
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, I think it's hard because I fear what happened last time, right, where we lost a year and a half with an interim coach. That if you're not going to go with Gregg, you should probably have a plan in place. And if you have a plan, not to say you should always be preparing for the successor, right? And not to say you can't really plan timing of who's available and whatnot, but I fear like you go into a January camp, you go, okay, we got some results. We don't need to rush this. And we're heading towards 2026 that I do think Gregg has pushed us forward as a national team in terms of a lot of things from what we saw here of dual national, the comment on here of dual national recruitment to implementing a style of play to building confidence in a very young and experienced squad to winning trophies regionally with this squad. But I do think that the next person, then, if it is the next person, needs to come in soon and be able to continue that plan because it does take a lot of infrastructure because you have to have all this planning that comes into a very tight window of time to execute on, like we just talked about as a national team. Charlie, what's your take on just the January camp or just the overall situation? Are you nervous at all about the timing? Patience versus trying to just make something happen. I mean, it feels like, how far could Gregg have gone before them saying, well, maybe we shouldn't make a change? Like, is it another round, or was the mind already made up? Or, I mean, it just feels like there's been zero statements from U.S. Soccer across the board.
Well, I would say January camp is just giving players in Major League Soccer a platform to be seen, to compete against each other, the top players. But if you're looking at the total picture, the whole picture, how many of these players right now would walk into this team? Not many. But it is a great opportunity for the best Major League Soccer players, and especially the younger ones with a lot of potential.
But that's what I mean. That's what my response is. The younger ones, right? The next generation players that will be in this team get an opportunity now.
But again, it's a long process. So there's no need to panic over a January camp. I think whether they end up having it, whether Gregg is managing this group, whatever happens, I do think they'll figure it out, and they'll have enough time to get a group of players together to have a successful camp where you just want to see guys compete, get into an opportunity to play a European club, usually in a friendly. And then, from there, hopefully we'll have a better idea of who the manager is for the next year.